Hi, everybody. And today on Sonali's Book Club, we have In Conversation with the one and only Charlie Mackesy. And I'm so excited to have him on the book club. We all know this book. And is it showing properly? Yes. This is the book. And I'm sure we've had conversations about this book, the posts on Instagram. We've all taken we've all in certain times when we've been low, we've been happy, we've always connected with whatever the pictures and the brief lines said. They were always just a short sentence, but always just touched you right where it mattered. And so the excitement today is to have Charlie in conversation on Sonali's Book Club. Welcome, Charlie. Welcome to Sonali's Book Club. And so excited to be here. And should we just dive into it? I have so many questions for you. The members have written in and they've asked so many questions. So I'm going to get to the members' questions. But for me, I want to start with, how did it all start?
I wish I could tell you or have a simple answer.
Is it a thought first or picture first? What comes first?
It really varies. There's no formula, and it happens that the thoughts can happen in the middle of the night or in conversation with friends, or I don't know, they just pop up in my head.
So when they pop up, what do you do? Do you note them down, or do you at once look for whatever the paper napkin there and start drawing? Or
that's exactly. I scribble all the time, everywhere, on anything.
Do they get lost? Do you suddenly find them? Oh, I had left this note.
Yes, they either get lost physically because I've put them somewhere and I can't find them, or they get lost in my head where I wake up at 2 a.m. thinking I'll remember that, and then in the morning I don't. So there are some that get lost.
When you remember a thought in the middle of the night, you write it down at that point of time. Have you ever done that?
Yes. Oh, yes, a lot. Yeah.
How tech savvy are you? Do you make a note on your phone, or do you physically?
Either paper, or I've got the notes in my phone that I do. I mean, I do have notes in my phone. So basically anything I can do to remember what I've thought. Or sometimes if I'm talking to a friend, I'll just say, particularly if they're having a difficult time and we're trying to work out what to do, one of us will say something, and I'll go, "Oh wait, that's right. And we analyze, we try to simplify a solution down, or if I'm trying to comfort a friend, or, it comes from every direction. And the animals, they've always been in my head. So, and I prefer the purity of a boy talking to animals, because I think the horse and the mole's quite funny. That there's no guile, there's no agenda in an animal. They're very pure. And
you said in your forward that all the four somewhere represent you.
Yes, or bits of me. Yes, but I didn't even know that until way after.
That's when you kind of represent you, and you just said that they've been in your head. Is it like a certain kind of thought, like your mole loves cake? So is there a certain voice that goes off? Do they have different tones, or what is it like?
They have. You know how there are different parts of us that are louder than the other bits of us sometimes. So sometimes you can just think, oh, this is all too difficult. I'm just going to have some chocolate now. Or there's a wiser part of you that goes, actually, you know what, Charlie, I think this is the best way forward. Or there's a bit of me that's just constantly asking questions like, how on earth do we get through this? And then there's another part in which the fox, which is the bit that's quite withdrawn and doesn't trust very easily, and sits further back silently. And they all kind of are vying for attention. I don't hear voices. I can feel the different bits of me in operation. Depending on the day, depending on the situation, depending on how I'm feeling.
Who is the loudest, or we can say who comes in more often amongst the four?
That's a really good question. I wish I knew. And I could pretend and say I do know, but I'm not going to pretend or lie. So I don't know. I think probably the mole is quite loud.
Yeah.
Because I think the mole, when the mole defaults to comfort, so reaches for cake.
Yes.
So in a way, the cake is whatever we go to.
Yeah.
You know, for instant comfort, gratification in a time of difficulty. So maybe the mole. I don't know. I don't know.
So maybe the mole. I feel maybe it's the boy, and because the boy is asking the questions, is where the answers keep coming from. Maybe not answers, but the other thoughts kind of. But it's the inquisitiveness of the boy that kind of leads you to this.
Yes, I mean the boy is essentially me, very much the central part of me, and I think we all remain. There's a child in us that always remains, and there's a child in us.
Touch with that child, and it's just.
I think I'm very in touch with that child. Always have been, and yeah.
Was
so
it conscious effort?
No, no. But I think there's definitely conversations we have with ourselves, within ourselves, and different parts of us have different answers. And that's, I think, what was going on in me. So I would say, I wonder, the boy has a question and then the answer arrived. And I think, well, that was a different part of me that had that answer. But, it's very difficult to analyze because on one level, I just like drawing and I like making people feel better. And I like the idea that you can make marks on paper that people can react in different ways, but ultimately they feel a bit better than they did before they saw it. And so, however I get to that stage, it's an alchemy, really. It's a hard thing to describe in an interview what happens,
Okay, but see, we all would love to be in touch with our inner child, and if we all in touch with our inner child, it would be wonderful. Life would be simpler, world would be simpler, society would be simpler.
Yes.
Because you're in touch with the inner child in you, and like you said, maybe you don't really know, but like how after going through this whole process, the book is out, and somewhere you realize that all these four characters are somewhere me. And in the same way, is there any sort of in this journey that you've had, have you realized how is it that you keep in touch with that inner child? Because we would all love to know that and kind of maybe apply it or find a version of it that we can apply to our lives.
That's a really, really good question. Because you're right. I think we all have the inner child. I think I definitely I have a little dog, Barney, who's right beside me, and I've always had small dogs ever since I was small, and so I think nature keeps me alive to the inner child. There's a beauty, and when I was small, I was brought up on a farm, and I was always in the fields or in the woods, just staring at everything and with a sense of wonder.
Okay.
And I think wonder is a childlike response to existence. So I think maybe we need to find things that are beautiful and ask ourselves how we feel about them, and connect with those things that are so deep. But I'm there's so much of me that would have the same questions as you do to me. I'm still trying to work out, the process and what it is. It's so, we work on such a deep level. We have a sort of conscious level, but most
Yes.
of us is
Yes.
I think 9/10 of us is subconscious.
Right.
So
I
it's,
think maybe what we could do then is that, just for my reference and for all of us, my members here, maybe
yeah,
for now, when we are looking for that inner child, it's just a reminder every day that let's look for the inner child. And at that point of time, I think this is the book. That's why we are all connecting with it so much. Somewhere it takes us to that inner
so
child.
yeah, I mean, that's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think we all have a deep sense somewhere of our inner child, and connecting with that is very important. And I think it opens you up to a side of yourself that is less cynical and more open and more you are
More accepting, maybe.
and there's a simplicity and a purity to that person,
Yes.
and uncluttered and not disaffected. Just here I am, what a beautiful world this is, and I'm okay as I am. I mean, I do think that's a huge thing with us as we get older, as we look back at mistakes, or we try to so hard in many ways to be acceptable or to be loved, or we never quite feel that we're enough. And I think that was a big journey of the boy, actually, because he did discover it, this sense that right here, right now, you and I are enough just as we are.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
and it's a conscious realization. The boy suddenly realizes it. And when I was little, I did think about those things.
When did you realize that right here, right now, and I'm okay and I'm enough the way I am? When did you realize?
Well, that's a good question, but I think you can feel it, and then I think there's another stage of when you actually consciously have the words to describe what that feeling is, and they're two different things. And as a child, I know that I felt it, but I wouldn't have. So I think maybe when I was about 7 or 8, I do remember thinking, I was under a railway. This is going to sound very odd, but I was under a big old railway bridge in the pouring rain, and I was looking at all the bolts in the steel, and I was looking at them, thinking, who made those, and how long ago was it, and how did that person feel right then when they were putting those bolts in? And I suspect that he was, or she, either of them, when they were working there, was, just hoping that they were okay, hoping that they had enough money to pay for this, would pay for their family or whatever. And I kept thinking about these people, and did they at that moment feel enough? Were they happy with themselves? I know it sounds really strange, but I got lost in this kind of strange question of, I'll never meet these people. This is 150 years ago they were doing this.
Amazing.
And I just hope these people at that time felt accepted, felt good about themselves. I know it sounds mad, but
No, it just sounds so kind.
Well, I think kindness is to ourselves and each other is so central to existence, and being kind it's proven that being kind makes you happy.
Absolutely, yes.
But sometimes we think the opposite, or we don't quite engage with that. But I think, and I was at a school which is very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And are you first, second, third, fourth, and you would evaluate yourself on where you were in that. And then as soon as school began, you were in a grading system, and you were told whether you were, and that reflected on how you saw yourself.
Right.
And so, there were lists of exam results on the walls, and you'd walk past and you would see every, very regularly where you were in that pecking order, where you were in that, and you would therefore evaluate, or you were in danger of saying, well, on that basis, I am either not very good or average, or and in a way, I remember thinking that has nothing to do with anything to do with who I really am. but
But
it's
it's
very.
amazing that at that age in school, you could identify that and say that
I
this
remember.
doesn't.
I remember there was a very quiet friend of mine who was very intelligent, and I always remember him. We were looking at it, and he just looked at me one day when we were looking at the list and said, "You know, Charlie, it's just not important."
Wow.
And I remember looking at him. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm not sure what I mean, but I just know this is not important to who you really are, to who any of us are." And he was probably 11. And you know, you carry these things all your life. You have moments in life where you've realized something or someone said something that completely disempowers a structure or a way of thinking that has held you in a certain position in your life. And you're free, you're suddenly free from it. So I remember thinking, so if I fail this exam, or if I'm bottom, or tomorrow if I'm top, or if I have a book, say, that does very well, or if I have a book that doesn't do very well, ultimately, it's not important.
But tell me, this thought in school, I just want to take you back over there. You go back home with this thought, and what would your parents tell you? Because see, most of the time, this is what a lot of kids probably think of, and we go through, we go home, and there is all this that, why haven't you got these grades? What is happening here? What was it like? What was the atmosphere like at home?
Well, this is interesting because I'm not for a second saying that these things don't matter. Of course they matter, and we should try and do our best. And you know, it's wonderful, and when parents see their children doing well or whatever. But I'm talking about a deeper level. That, and I remember my parents, my mother and father were very different, still are. I mean, my mum and my father was, you know, the very clever, ambitious one. And my mother just used to hug me all the time, and was very simple about love, and found me funny, and liked the fact that I spent the whole day in the woods. And those two voices were very important in different ways. But I think there was a general sense that, you know, just make sure in life you feel peaceful. And I can't really describe it, but it wasn't a very ambitious household. It was if there was an ambition, it was for happiness rather than achievement. So
from your childhood, that has been the key to it, that be ambitious. Ambition is not bad, but be ambitious.
Not bad. No.
Yes, be ambitious for the right things.
But also, I think also make sure that the ambition for achieving something, and whether you achieve it or not, doesn't dictate your value.
Yes. Difficult. It's something that one needs to tell oneself every day. It's not like.
I mean, I'm saying, the thing is, the irony is I'm saying this to you now, you know, and there's, again, the different parts of us, and some parts of me still doesn't understand that. There's still parts of me that is still on that journey.
It's an ongoing process.
It's a process. It's definitely a process of a journey into self-acceptance, giving yourself grace and love as you, and then I think that affects how you treat other people, probably.
When did you realize that you could draw well, really well? Did you always draw as a child? You were always.
Yes. I mean, you're very kind to say that I draw well. I mean, some people would say that I don't, but I mean, I remember it was a place I could go to. So we all have ways. Everyone is different, but we all have things we do that take us somewhere. Somewhere else.
Always.
This was.
This was your happy place always.
Yeah, and I lived on a farm, and there were always cows and horses. There were always creatures around, and I drew them. Why
old fox and the horse, and why not cows or hens or a chicken?
I know. Well, I know. You're right. It's a good question, and I'm not. I mean, I think I quite like them because they were just so different.
Yeah.
You know, you got this big, kind, wise horse, and a tiny, tiny little mole who's so greedy and impulsive, and then this fox who's got a dark history, and then a very pure, questioning boy. So there were other animals that came into the fray that they met along the way, like polar bears and penguins, and they hung around for a while, but then disappeared. And they stuck, and their relationships deepened. And and I think in life it's very important to have levity and pathos, to have depth and lightness, to have a rhythm of life where and I think the mole is funny, and I think the balance felt right, and also visually, I like, even now, as I'm sitting here, I scribble instinctively, and without thinking about it, I start drawing one of the four without even thinking about it.
I have in that sense, a very, very, like, probably you've been asked this question very often, but I have a reason for asking that. Did you go to art school?
That's a good question. I didn't. I tried to go. But I was in London. I tried to go to an art school in London, and it was quite severe, and it had a deep sense of what was right and wrong, and what you should be doing, and what art should be. And I was worried that if I stayed there, they would crush it.
Oh my God, that puts so beautifully. Because there's so many times when kids are telling you that, like my nephew says that when he draws, and the moment my sister tells him that, you need to take art, you're good at it, why don't you take art classes? And he's like, that's so boring. That just takes the fun. And they just do that, and we're always pushing them to do it. So that's the reason why I wanted to ask you this question, because as a parent, and we have a lot of members here who would be parents, and I think something that's a passion, and if you can just kind of, your happy place can take you somewhere, and doesn't necessarily have to be kind of compartmentalized or streamlined and given some sort of a formal structure every time.
That's absolutely right. A performance structure, it often doesn't need that. And sometimes a performance structure will, in many ways, disempower it, or take away the joy of it, or the fun of it, or the secrecy of it, or so for me, the drawing was always extracurricular. The drawing was always something that no one could grade.
Well said. No one could grade. That was
right. Right. So it was something that was mine, and that I could enjoy and disappear into, and treasure it. And also, no one could tell me what to do, or what to draw, or how to draw. I just made my own. And everyone can draw. They just draw differently.
No, I can't draw.
Yes, you can. You just don't draw like anyone else. I promise you. I used to volunteer in a place for the elderly, who often, many of them had dementia,
Mm-hmm.
and all of them said they couldn't draw. And we used to say, well, you can. You were just probably told you can't when you were young, or you don't draw like you wished you could. But the point is, you can draw, and
Okay.
if you want to draw because it's fun, the only way you'll enjoy it is if you take the pressure off yourself to make a drawing that looks how you want it to look. Accept it right there as it is, in the way that you accept yourself right now as you are. And so you make
the squiggles and then say, okay, what could I have meant by this?
Well, or not even analyze it. That's the thing. Be a child. So I used to say to them, pretend you're 4 or 5 years old. Did you criticize your drawings then?
No, we were so proud of it. It felt
You
so
love them. Look at this. I've done this thing that looks like
an
upside down alien.
Yeah.
Well done. And I think, go back to that. And it was amazing, because after a few months, I used to go there once a week. They would just get into a fervor of scribbling and making, and I would say, make a mess. It's okay to make a mess. And you can just throw them away, but don't judge them or evaluate them or anything. Just enjoy the process rather than trying to, make it look like you wanted to. And once we discovered process, that's when the drawings ironically started to become beautiful. But it wasn't because I think we forget to enjoy the process. But the process was messy. So I think that's what life's like.
The process is mess. Life is a mess. Accept it, and that's the beauty. So that's the thing. Accept okay. That's
and also there's always the editor, the critic in your head.
Yeah.
Will say, "Oh gosh, did you? No, dear, oh dear, stop! No, give up. Don't do that anymore." That.
How do you keep that critic away and say, "Stop it. Keep quiet."
Yeah. You just have the answer is, well, I'm enjoying it, and you can't criticize pleasure. I'm enjoying doing this drawing. So, critic, you have no power here.
Yeah. We were always drawing, and
were you?
But the book, obviously the Instagram happened before the book.
Yeah. It did. Instagram is really the birthplace of the book,
Right.
Because what I loved about Instagram, and still do very much, is reading what the responses and what they say. And then, so the book was a journey made with people I've never met. Many of them in India, lots of comments have been for years, have been coming from India and all over the world, but I enjoyed the reactions, and they swayed me in what I felt, because you can think something's important, but you're not sure if anybody else does, right? And
when you got feedback, it made you want to do more?
The feedback made me realize that you could make marks and write words that help people, that help people get through a day or see life differently, or made themselves feel more acceptable, or any of those things, or many other things. But I think, had I been in a room on my own, without Instagram, without engagement, without feedback and conversation, the book would have been. And also, I have friends, I have my phone, I have WhatsApp, and I would do drawings and then WhatsApp my friends saying, do you think this is true? Do you feel this? And I've got friends, some of whom are very depressed, some of whom are very not depressed, but fine. And I enjoyed hearing all those different comments. And I've always really loved processing with other people. And one of the dangers of being an artist is you don't get the chance to do that. I've never enjoyed that side of being an artist, is you're, in a room and making drawings, and you're not quite sure, how they make people feel, and until people see them. But if you can process, like Instagram is a process, and that's such a gift to me,
That's the good part of social media. Like for me, the book club has been that, it's been a boon. It's seen me through really tough times. It's the connection, being able to share things with people has just like it's just taken me through so much of my life's journey. So I get what you're saying. But now, how does it feel to be an author? How did that bit happen?
I don't know if I mean,
did you ever see yourself here?
No.
Are you enjoying this place?
Yeah,
where you are right?
I'm enjoying it for not the obvious reasons. I think okay, so I think fame is meaningless. I don't think it's good for anyone. And once you earn a certain amount of money, it doesn't, over a certain level, it doesn't increase your happiness.
Right.
So those two things are fairly low on the list of why I like being an author. I think the greatest thing for me is I get letters quite a lot. From I got 2 letters yesterday. One was from a great grandmother, who was given her book by her granddaughter, I think, and said that she decided she said, I like your book very much, and now I've started to ask for help. And I really cried. She told me a
Oh,
little bit what she'd been struggling with as a great grandmother, and her physical frailty, and how
right,
she
right.
having been quite a proud person. She
Mhm.
and so that really moved me, and then I got a letter from an 11-year-old boy in Ireland
Mm.
who wrote my name and the local town. He doesn't know my address, and it somehow managed to get to me,
Wow.
and said, I've taken my book under my arm every day since the pandemic started, and it's helped me get through.
Mhm.
And I draw in it, and I write in it, and and it's made me think. So I think for me, it's a long answer to the question, what's it like being an author? The reason why I love it is
Mm.
because of the responses I get from other people who've told me
How
what
much helped
what
them?
being an author for me has how it's helped them,
Beautiful.
rather than how I feel about myself. And because you know yourself, and you're just the same person. You're still just this strange creature wandering around the planet. There's nothing different about me. But what is different is my interactions with other human beings, and for that I'm so grateful, genuinely grateful.
That you would say is the highlight of your career?
Yeah,
The responses you get, the fact that it is helping others?
yeah. That is sometimes when I'm really tired, or because I'm actually working on another book now, and also a little short film, and it's
We want to know about it.
yeah. Well, I'm who knew? I mean, like now I'm after this call with you, I'm going on a Zoom call for 2 hours, and then so it's 4 hours a day on a Zoom call, looking at the movements of the boy, and with people, animators, and I love it, but I'm so out of my depth. But I know for me that you just have to say, well, everybody's winging it,
Yeah.
we're just giving it a go.
Yeah.
But then when I am tired, I think, you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And I think if you know why you're doing something, it will always help how you do it.
Yes.
So the question is why, and then the answer is, for me, is because it hopefully will make people feel better about and more hopeful than they did before. And if that's the reason, then I'll get up in the morning and I'll do it.
Fabulous.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Nice. We are a book club. So I would like to ask you, who is your favorite?
my favorite author.
Yeah. Which is your favorite book or favorite author? What is it that?
It changes all the time, and there are some books that I loved at the time that I no longer love, and there are some books that I've read and I reread, and they still carry that.
So which is the book that you keep going back to?
Well, there are a few. There was a writer and an illustrator who wrote and illustrated his own books when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
And you may well never have heard of him. He's called Edward R. Dezzoni. And he wrote books about a boy called Tim.
Okay.
And he drew them, and they were ink and watercolor drawings. And they were also, so he influenced me hugely. And he would take you into this world of Tim's, which was precarious, difficult, but adventurous. But somehow he managed to keep the vulnerability of Tim. So you could feel it,
Nice.
You felt like Tim. So you could enter into this world and experience those things with him. And I've held that character in my heart all my life.
Oh,
And, yeah.
and
what was really strange actually was a few years ago I was in conversation with a friend, a good friend called Matthew, and I was telling him about this affection I had for these books.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Oh, me too." And then he looked at me, and he has a big old house, and he said, "Go to the top floor and go to the far end room and go into there's a bedroom. I go in there and have a look on the walls." And so I did, and in that bedroom all around the walls were original drawings that Edward Ardisoni had made for the Tim books. And I stared at them, and they were rough and they had things crossed out, and but I could see his process
right
round the room. He'd bought them in an auction for not very much money, I don't think. But I was just, I cried, and I thought, my gosh, that it was so great to see process rather than finished book.
Yeah.
And, and so that book, so Edward Ardisoni was big in me. Strangely, Tolstoy had a huge effect on me.
Okay.
I don't know why. I think the way he described life in Russia in those days, I think Anna Karenina had a huge effect on me. The way his descriptions of the movements of people scything. I still remember him describing how all these, as they call them, peasants, were in a line, slowly, methodically scything this grass. And I've always remembered how it felt to read, as you read those words, how you understood everything that he was saying, and you were right there. And he was jealous of these people. He was jealous of their simplicity, of their lives, of quiet motion, and how they sat under trees and ate food, and everything was just, in the complexity of the world that we are in, there's something about that life, that Tolstoy's choice of words and how it made you feel really, really still affects me. Yeah. I think Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, again, it's the thickest book in the world and scares me when I look at it.
Yeah.
And I know there's a musical made of it, but I still go back to that because of his understanding of human nature and what greed does to people, what love looks like, what love will do to save someone. And there's some descriptions by Hugo that will always stay with me. And I suppose the other book that stayed with me is quite left field, which is Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. And I read it, it hit me fair and square when I read it when I was 16, because the first paragraph is one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life was reading the first paragraph, because he broke all the rules. And at school, you were taught how this is, and he just said, this is good writing and this isn't. And he just said, the opening lines were something like, oh, I suppose you're going to want to know where I went to school and where I was brought up and all that kind of crap, but I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what? You can't begin a book like that. It was so honest and so liberating to see that here was this book that had been venerated and held as a great piece of literature, and yet begins with, I suppose you're going to want to know, And I thought, what is that? How is he broken through into a place of absolute, whether it's engineered honesty or genuine honesty, either way. To me, at the time, it opened the world of books to me. Right. I thought it was a door into a world of, it's a bit like someone presenting something to you in a certain way all your life, and then suddenly you go around and see it from another angle. And I thought, wow, that's a world I'm interested in now.
A whole new dimension kind of opens out for you.
Right. And I also think, it identified with me where I was at the time, which is when you find a book that speaks to you where you are right now, it will always stay with you and be in your heart, encouraging you in some way that you're okay, or you're not alone. I mean, I think the great thing about books is that you don't feel alone when you read them.
They're your best friend.
Yeah, we read so we don't feel alone, I think, probably. I think there's that huge connection we desire and seek. And if a physical entity of pages with words on them can make you feel connected, then that is a priceless object. Mm-hmm. It's priceless. And I think that's the value of books and the words within them, as they
You've said it so beautifully.
Oh.
So what are you reading right now?
Well, do you know, right now, I hate to admit it, but I'm so involved in writing the script for the film
Okay.
that I've been listening to books.
Well, but I don't think you should hate saying that. I think that's
Yeah.
great because I mean, I know so many people who've never been great readers, but the moment they could
Yes.
hear, suddenly it's opened a whole new world to them. And I think, again, in the preconceived notions that you have to read only is
Yes.
a preconceived notion. I think Audible or hearing the audiobooks has opened the world to so many children who have learning or reading.
I think that's, I love that. I mean, I think to be able to just do something else and have a book be read. I mean, I love being read to, you know, one of my favorite things.
As a child, we've all loved
There you go. There you go. So why not continue
reading to us?
And I, you know, but that's the other thing about pictures is I still love pictures in a book. Mm-hmm. And why is it that suddenly when you reach the age of 12 or whatever, pictures are no longer important. You just have a sea of words. So I would still like to read novels that had drawings in them. It would help me, you know. They're like, as I said in the book, they're like rewards, or they're like islands you can get to. Yeah. But I think some authors are just so good you don't need pictures. Yeah. Some authors are just so unbelievably gifted at creating, at painting an image in your head that you can mm-hmm. see it all so clearly that imagery is not important. Or, you know,
always, I would say that I love the fact that I can form my own visual to it. And there are certain books that I really love about the fact that it's just words and whatever that visual is mine. Though there is a description, but from there, the visual is mine. And yet there are some times when the visuals are so endearing that what you said is true. That so I think it should not be a rule. There should be the variety, and that would be the...
Oh yeah, variety, obviously. Yes. But I think I remember also reading, you've opened a can of worms now because I've got so many books in my head, but I think opening paragraphs are very important.
Yeah.
I will
hook you in or they don't.
Or they don't. And I know with it, it's terrible. And I'm often wrong because, you know, the opening paragraph can be fairly average, but actually the book can be beautiful. So, but Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. Okay. I think Steinbeck's a great writer. And I remember reading his opening paragraph. And I remember reading it over and over and over again, mm-hmm. because he describes very, very poetically and beautifully this place called Cannery Row in Monterey in California. And he describes it as being, it's a quality of light, it's a stink, it's a grating noise. He comes up with metaphors for this place. And then he describes the people who live in it are very ordinary, a lot of struggles. There's all kinds of grungy lifestyles in this place. And he puts it so well. And then he said, had the man looked through another keyhole, he would have seen saints and martyrs and holy men. And by this, he would have meant the same thing. And I remember going, oh my gosh, that it suddenly, he said, don't evaluate what you see. That underneath this life, this messy life, there is deep beauty. There's profound treasure in people that doesn't present itself when things look messy. It just depends how you look at it. And that line, had the man looked through another keyhole, he would have seen saints and martyrs and holy men or people just, and that paragraph again has always stayed with me because it really affected how I look at things, look at people, and I don't judge by the surface of things.
So wonderful. If I have your permission, I would love to put out this list of books as once suggested by you on our book club, and so the members can just go and refer to it and pick up and read what you're talking about. So I would love to do that if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, some of them are quite irreverent, and they're you know, they're pretty out there, but they're all classics as I understand them. You know, there are many others too, Pride and Prejudice, all these other books that have affected me. But but for me, if I had to take one, it would probably be the one I started with right at the beginning was that. But I don't even think they're in print anymore. You know, Edward Ardazoni. I know they should be.
But let's put it on the list and see if we can kind of find it. It would be lovely if we could find something.
Tim All Alone and Tim at Sea, I think. But Tim All Alone made me feel less alone because I read about someone who was alone. And I think when you read about someone who feels like you do, you don't feel so alone.
Yes, you know that you're not alone because there's somebody else like you.
Someone else. You know, it's like friendship. Friendship starts when someone says, "Oh, I didn't know you felt that." Well, that's how I feel. Me too.
Yeah, you're right. Yes.
Right. That's the connection right there. So a book, it can be, you know, a friend. The tragedy of a book is that it ends, so you have to start back at the beginning again. They're friends.
That statement, what you said over there was so important because, you know, we kind of try to connect with people and we're saying, okay, I want to make friends and these are my friends and this is the thing. And we use the word friends, but the way you just define friendship has been so wonderful. Friendship starts, it's when you meet somebody who says, oh, I didn't know you feel the same.
Yeah.
And it's that feeling. And you know that if somebody feels the way you feel, that is a friend.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
And we're not, you and I understand each other. We're not alone.
Thank you.
We have empathy.
Thank you. Thank you. That was today's this for me. Just on that note, I'm going to, before everybody goes into this, I'm going to take on some questions from the members. Okay. I need my reading glasses. Dr. Soumya Goyal wants to know, which character do you relate to the most? The boy, the mole, the fox, or the horse? I think I can answer that. You've answered that. You see, you relate to all four in different
ways. I suppose you were right. You corrected me because I think it is the boy.
It is the boy.
Yeah, it's the boy who's got questions and is openly frightened and vulnerable. So yeah, the boy.
Yeah. So here, Dr. Soumya, you have the answer.
There's the answer.
Boy, yes, we've got the answer. Dr. Soni says that why is the mole so aloof?
That's a very, very interesting question. And actually very perceptive. The mole, I think, is very English. And I think is quite emotionally unavailable. And the only thing he really expresses is his love for cake.
Yes.
Because in the book he says, sometimes I want to say I love you all, but I find it difficult. So I would say the mole's not aloof, but the mole is emotionally not repressed, but a bit locked in, you know. And that aloofness can be misunderstood. I think aloofness and shyness even can be often seen as arrogance or superiority, but it can just be.
So you think Paul is shy or is he aloof?
I don't think he's shy or aloof. I just think he struggles with expressing emotion, which is a different thing. But except for his love for cake, and that's where it all happens. Yeah. But it's a really good question, and no one's ever asked that before.
Fabulous, Dr. Soni, you heard that? No one's ever asked this question. Thank you for this question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Keita Arnold asked, did you consider other characters besides the boy, and which ones?
Yes, I mean, I often drew a girl of the same age.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that could have happened, but because I'm a boy, it felt more natural to speak from who I am, and I felt more akin to the boy. But there were other characters like polar bears, as I said. There was an elephant. There was a huge elephant for a while. So yeah, it's a good question, but ultimately you have to, you can't draw everyone.
Yes,
Although
the boy
I had to make a decision.
connects with the boy. Mehroon says, once the mole said, if one can't succeed in life, you should eat the cake. Is there some inner meaning? I think we've kind of covered it, where you did say that. What do you mean by cake? Is that
Well,
thing that's an instant comfort.
The great thing for me is that everyone has their own responses to the book, and we'll have that.
Your cake. We need to figure out. Everybody needs to figure out what is their cake.
For me, if at first I don't succeed, have the cake. The cake for me would be, just watch a film or go down to the sea, go and have a cup of coffee with your friend. Just default to what you love to do.
Right.
And give yourself a break. That
yes.
It's okay. Come back another day, but right now, don't beat yourself up about failure. It's not worth it. So
not going to feel so much of a failure as time passes.
Right.
So right. It's that transition kind of a
thing. Exactly.
Yeah. Liz Simon asks, my question, if it were not for the pandemic, do you think people would have connected in the same way about what you say in the book? I just love it and have gifted it many times.
Well, that's a very good question. The answer is I have no idea. The book was published in England in October 2019. The pandemic arrived in March for us in 2020. So it had 6 months of a life before it. And I think was already connecting with people in those months. But I think probably the pandemic pushed us into a deeper sense of.
It was meant to come at this time.
Maybe that's a good answer. It was meant to. I personally would struggle to say that because it sounds grandiose. But I mean, you can say that.
No, I really believe it because it's everything. Okay, yes, I get what you're saying, but with whatever, as you grow, you realize everything, and which is the way. So I've been brought up with as a Hindu, and that's one thing that is in your subconscious all the time. Yeah. You're always told that what is meant to be will be, and if it's time for it, it will happen. Yeah. And that's what it was. The world needed this book, and here you are. You came out with it, and the world needed it. I think I would like to believe that about the book.
I would say in the making of it, the year we were making it, so 2019, the first half of that year, was a very difficult time. Making the book was extremely hard. I know it doesn't look it, but it really was in my life, and all kinds of things were happening that were difficult. And also, I had a deadline to finish the book, which was June 2019, and I kept thinking, I'm not sure if we're going to get it done in time, if I'll finish everything. But I really, we just felt that we had to do it. That there was something in us that said, you have to get it done. Just make sure, whatever happens to you, make sure you get this book out by before the end of the year, because we could feel it. And I didn't know why. I had no understanding of the urgency or what it was that was coming, but we could feel it. And I remember saying to my lovely Irish friend who worked with the publisher, I remember saying to him, it feels like we really need to do this, doesn't it? Like make a treasure for people of some sort. And we were sitting and he came to see me in my garden and we were drinking tea. We both agreed. He said, I just said, I don't care about whether it makes money or whether it doesn't. I just feel whatever we are saying, we need to say it now. And we need to make it. And he agreed. We both had tears in our eyes, and we just said, yeah, we really need to do this. I'll never forget it. It was a very cold day. It was one of sunny, cold days, drinking tea, and we could see our breath. And and so in answer to your question, there was a sense in me and us that we needed to do. We didn't know what was to come. And had there been no pandemic, I hope it still would have met people where they were. I would hate to think that it was only relevant for times such as this, but at least it helped. I'm thrilled that it's helped people in this time. You know.
I think it's relevant. It's going to be relevant always.
Oh, do you think so?
Because these emotions are human, and these are the questions we're always going to have as human beings.
Yeah.
I think that we as human beings probably needed this during the pandemic, and so it was the right time for it to come. But I don't think that if there was no pandemic, this book wouldn't affect. It was at any given point of time in life, this book would be something you would connect with. Definitely.
Well, that's very kind.
Bhavna Khurana says, what was your inspiration behind such a thoughtful book?
The inspiration, gosh, that's a hard question. I think to create something that was loving and kind and hopeful.
That's beautiful.
That's probably the inspiration.
That's beautiful. Loving, kind, and
hopeful.
Helpful. Hopeful.
Hopeful.
Yes,
Yeah.
hopeful. Hope. That's what we live by. Sisyphia says your book is very helpful, but why only hope? Is fear not relevant? Is fear only to be fought and not understood? Can everything really be answered? These are a lot of questions.
Can you say the question again? Sorry. It's a good question.
Says that your book is very helpful, but why only hope? Is fear not relevant? Is fear only to be fought and not understood? Can everything really be answered?
Well, the last question first, no. I think nothing. Everything can't always be answered, but we can try and answer questions. Mm-hmm. Fear. There are different types of fear. Some mm-hmm. fear is useful, like be frightened of a tiger that's approaching you. You might want to, get out of the way. So that's healthy fear. But there's another kind of fear which is unnecessary and debilitating and can ruin your life. Mm-hmm. And or you could call it anxiety, or fear has many names. And so I suppose for me,
so I
think I'm trying to. I suppose understanding fear. Everyone has different fears, and so it's very hard to.
So if for me, fear, you would probably know if it's a helpful fear or a not.
Yeah, there are definite fears which are not useful at all, mm-hmm. And there are some fears that are clearly, within us to stop us from being.
That fear is not just to be fought, but to be understood, so you can identify which fear is going to help.
Absolutely right. To be understood. Yeah. Totally agree. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Arpan Singh says, where did the idea for this book come from? We go back to the question, did the drawings come first or did the feelings come first?
Do you know the conversation came first and individual drawings and the concept within them, and then at some point on Instagram and in my studio when there were just hundreds of drawings, thousands of drawings everywhere, it looked like there could be a book. But right. I didn't start by going, I'm going to make a book. I started by having a thought or a feeling, writing it down, drawing it, and that was enough.
When you see any page in your book, when you open it, there is a question, there is an answer, but the fact is that when you put it this way, what I understand is that it's a feeling.
Yeah.
And I think that dominates the narrative more than anything else. It's the feeling, and so I would, if I feel that the book came from a feeling rather than just. I could be wrong, but that's
no. I think you're completely right. Yeah, I think it came from the subconscious and feelings.
Yeah.
And deeper than my own objective self. If someone had said to me, for instance, okay, you have to make a book that let's say 2 or 3 years ago, that will help people through a world health crisis, what would you do? I would not have said, okay, I'll do a picture book about a boy, mole, and fox and horse. That would not have been my answer.
But
So
who
I
would have thought that's what is working?
Right. So in a way, it came from slowly, like water coming through rock. It drips through, and I was catching the water as time went by, and distilling it. So I think these complex ideas and things I try to simplify down into emotions. And but again, this is the thing. It's only in retrospect I say that. It's not something I was trying to affect or trying to conspire.
But it was subconscious, which is kind of consolidated into this.
Exactly. But it was as you quite rightly say, it was trying to put feelings down that then you then try to find an order and and put them in a book.
Horn says, thank you for the gift to the world. What page or quote was the toughest to write or closest to home for you?
The two of the first drawings were, what do you want to be when you grow up? Kind said the boy. And what's the bravest thing you've ever said? Help, said the horse. And those two drawings, again, it wasn't just for me. Those two drawings have been used a lot around the world.
But why were the toughest to write?
Oh, toughest. Oh, I didn't hear that bit of the question. Sorry.
What she said. What page or quote was the toughest for you to write, or which one was closest to home? So either or, but was it the toughest? Which was closest?
The closest to home was help. What's the bravest thing you've ever said?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that was closest to home. The toughest. That's a good question.
Which feeling was the toughest one for you, actually? Let's put it that way, because these are feelings.
I think, do you have any other advice? The boy and the horse says, don't measure how valuable you are by the way you're treated.
Beautiful.
It wasn't tough to draw, but it represents a tough journey.
Yeah.
In me, and I think probably for human beings, is to carry that preciousness of yourself and your value in spite of how other people treat you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. Thank you for that answer.
That's all right.
Neelam says, where did this idea come from? A book to suit all age groups, a comic, a self-help book, a go-to forever book. Did you anticipate that the book would create such an euphoria in such a short time? It is such a soothing book in the current chaotic and uncertain times. Thank you for writing this wonderful book.
Well, that's a lovely thing to say. I mean, as I said before, it wasn't something. It wasn't something I set out to achieve. I think I tried to make drawings and words that were intimate and as though I was writing them to someone I know well, and not trying to speak to a big world. And I think the world is just made up of millions of individuals like me. It's not it. So as long as you're writing directly to one person, that's enough. And if you write honestly and with integrity and with your emotions, I think that's what happened. But I had someone said, oh, you need to write, something that's going to do this. I would have been clueless. I would have not known what to do. So
yeah,
I'm just,
the answer to that is there in your book when you say, this is so, when they're in the wilderness and you say, can you see the next step?
Yeah.
And he says, yes, just take it. And that's what it has been. It's just, if you look at the whole path, you're going to be lost because it's
right.
But the next step, let's just take this.
That's definitely advice I'd give to myself.
Yeah.
I can't see a way through this.
Yeah.
At all. But can you see, you're literally your next Well, I'll just take that and then.
Namrata Tiwari is asking, what are your favorite books? Namrata, he has already answered that question, but I just wanted to add that we will be putting the list up also. So that would help you with that question. Kalash says, such deep conversation in a child's illustration. Why? And what made you think it'll be this great? He's just said it, that he didn't think it would be great. And as I think all people steal ideas from somewhere, the great stealers steal from hundreds and make it original. Where did you steal from? I think he has already told us where he has been inspired from. And I think child's illustration, why, is the interesting part of the question. Though I don't think it's a child's illustration, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm taking this answer myself here. I felt that this was simplifying. If the same place had the drawing being complicated, just the fact that it was so simple, the sentences were so simple, that we got the profoundness of the meaning because it was so simple.
I think simplicity can be complex.
Yes.
And complexity can be simple. It's just navigating a way through it, the complexity, to find words that, sentences that are short.
Yeah. And that book Amaze has a question, which I think this answers that question. He found the book is fascinating. How did you get the idea? How did you create such a book in minimum words that explain a lot? And I think you just answered that question also by saying, it's about how complex simplicity can be and how simple complexity can be. And yet again, with so many gems that you've given us, even in this conversation. And I'm going to go through this conversation yet again, because there's so many things that I can pick out of it and take me through today, tomorrow, and a few more weeks and months to come by. Charlie, it has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
I love this conversation. Invite me back.
I would love to, and I would, and I really, really wish this pandemic passes and I can actually come to where you are and do this conversation, or have you come to us here in India. We would love
I've never been to India. Either would be lovely. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks to everybody who's been so kind and enthusiastic about the book. It means so much, So all your listeners, a huge gratitude to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Bye-bye.
Bye.